Okay, so we're back. We're going to now dive into the new version of CorelDRAW 2019. I'm going to minimize the window here in my text editor. And so down on the Docker, and in the dock of the Mac, I am using a MacBook Air. And about this Mac is a MacBook Air 13-inch. It is 2.2 gigahertz with an Intel Core i7 processor, 8 gigabyte of RAM, and it also uses a solid state drive, which is going to be crucial. One of the recommendations in Corel.com, when you look at the system parameters and the requirements from a computer, you'll want to use a solid state drive just to be more effective in the movement and much faster as it processes all that data. So that's my Mac. Let's go to Corel.com and see if we can find the version system parameter. So we're going to open that up here. And so at Corel.com we have the price, we have the full version or an upgrade price. You can download or get the box. Of course, I'd recommend getting the box. And then you can download the trial. And also they have features, what's new, they have a compare. So what was before and what is new in the latest version, and then system requirements. So these are the things I wanted to point out. The system requirements for Windows, and so what else is, we've got CD, Intel Core i3, 5 or 7. You want at least 2 gig of RAM on your computer, 2.5 gigabyte hard drive space. And then let's see if it gives us the system requirements for the Mac. I don't see that. Here we go. Looking for a Mac version. So we click that button. And these are the overview features and system requirements for the Mac. So if you're wanting to learn about the Mac, it's got the numbers there. Multi-core processor, 64-bit. You want 2 gig of RAM. 8 is recommended, 4 gigabyte hard drive space, and they do recommend the solid state drive. So there's your requirements for the new 2019 for either Windows or on a Mac. All right, so let's minimize and open this up, probably for the second time I've ever opened it up here. CorelDRAW 2019 on a Mac. So this is loading up an evaluation, and I'm not even going to go into much detail other than to say here is something that you are used to seeing in the Windows side, the getting started, the highlights. CorelDRAW usually publishes these columns of data to show the new stuff, learning abilities of hints and tutorials. They've got tutorials on the bottom. The community, quick reference card, user guide, and contact support. Gallery, and also how to get more. So opening it for the second time, the second day, I've got 15 days left on my trial. Special offers, applications, plugins, fonts, and content, and then my library. So we're going to say get started, and I'm going to now click on new document. So hopefully we'll go through some of these fundamental screens. You're looking for the similarities between things that you did in the Windows side. And for those that are used to using a Mac, some of this won't give you any trouble at all. But those that want to switch from Windows to Mac, that's really for the purpose of this video, to introduce that. And so we're going to give this a name. This is pretty standard on the Windows side, giving it a name. Let's just give it plaque for a name, and then our presets, nothing different there. We do want to work in the RGB color mode still for lasers, and we're going to use the dimension of, let's say, how about a width of 8 and a height of 6. Notice I just had to push tab once. That's pretty neat because in the Windows side it goes to the inches format and then back over. So some of us get caught on that, but this is pretty slick. It just goes straight down. little bitty difference or observation, but I like it. And let's go down to color. So we're going to use the RGB color palette, and hopefully we'll look at that. So we'll say OK. And now here we go, launching a new workspace in CorelDRAW 2019 on a Mac, first time ever. All right, so I have my screen set to dark. Now, this is again the second time I open it, and it opened dark already. So I don't know if that's pulling from something I had already set, or if this is going to be the default on how it opens on all new Mac sides. Most of the designers in the art world, as best I've seen, will show a dark background instead of the bright white workspace that most of us see by default. So let's just kind of draw out some differences. On the very top you have your About This Mac, and then we have CorelDRAW 2019. And then we have File, Edit, View. So your menu bar is way up at the top. We have Object, Effects, Bitmaps. Most of that is the same, what you're used to seeing on the Windows side. There are some differences. For example, we have under CorelDRAW 2019 Preferences, and we have CorelDRAW. And anything with the 3 dots means there's more menus or dialogues to open, but Tools and Color Management and Global, a little difference there. And then Save Settings as default, checking for updates and account, and so forth. We're going to go to File and look at Save As. So a lot of this stuff is pretty much the same. So we have our page that is 8 inches across and 6 inches tall. One thing that I'll remind you is that when I installed this last night, I had to turn on my status bar. So you see in the very bottom, page 1, the status bar, and that's our object details. This is the same, or coordinates from Windows, but under View, I had to go to View Status Bar. So it actually, by default, opened this way. So I noticed that difference. So I went to View to turn on or show my status bar. Another thing you'll notice right off the bat, or I'll point out, is the zoom level is way over here. So we have our zoom to page width and height and zoom level. Then we have our advanced. Some of these things were built into the menus in Windows, but now they are on separate push buttons in this tall icon bar. And then we have a group and ungroup, lock and unlock, and alignment. One thing I'll answer from our agenda list is I don't see hotkeys here. I don't know that we're not going to have them, but I don't see them here. So I don't have our famous letter P for centering an object to the center of the page, but that is the center of the page right here. We have our mirror buttons. We have arrange and view and guide, so we can show or hide the rulers. We can view the grid, and then we have show or hide the guidelines. Then we have aligning objects to the document grid, objects and page. This is our snap. And then we have get more, which we won't go into that, or inspectors. This is typical. The word inspectors of this button usually refers to a Docker of some kind on the Mac side of things. But just draw your attention, the workspace looks very similar to what you would see in a Windows. You have the same pick tool, you have the same shape and crop and zoom and pen and so forth, all the way down to the Smart Fill tool. So all of those things are the same. Even the flyouts are relatively the same. In our property bar, that's looking pretty similar to what we're used to. Custom, 8x6, page orientation, multiple pages. Of course, that's referring to the page 1 at the bottom as you increase the number of pages. How that is handled, inches, the nudge, and then we have our duplicate distance, and then we have our color palette. So I'm going to hover my cursor over the square, hoping it would give me an RGB value spitting out there from the side, but it does not. Then this objects, this is referring to in Windows the Object Manager. That's what we called it there, the Object Manager Docker. That can be closed. I think if I click that X button, it'll close it. And it has our text docker open as well, so I will close that just to see if I can gain a little more space. So the status line, as we spoke earlier, is listed down below. We have a outline of RGB, so we are using our outline, or I'm sorry, our RGB color palette. So in the first glance, we see many of the similarities, a few differences. Again, no hotkeys that I can tell. But I'm going to just start by typing out some text. So if I click on the text tool, remember to type in artistic text. We're going to click one time, and we'll just type presented to John Doe for outstanding service to citizens of Honolulu, Hawaii. Chamber of Commerce, May 2020. So I'm going to now move the cursor away, and it's really responding as Windows does. So I'm going to go back and click on the pick tool. Now, one of my favorite hotkeys in the Windows side was when I was finished, I didn't have to take my cursor and go all the way over there and click on the pick tool. I could just push Control spacebar. But that doesn't seem to be working. So Control spacebar at this stage, best I can tell, does not work. So I'm going to go back and click on the pick tool. And I wish I had my letter P key to send that hotkey, to send that text mathematically to the center of the page, but that does not happen either. So I'm going to go to my alignment and simply click center of page. And then I'm going to choose my justification of my text to be center aligned on each other. So theirs looks more, that's more of what I'm used to seeing. Now I'm going to click on the shape tool, and I'm going to bring the text further down. So that may be new to some of you, but that is acting the same. Let's check my spacebar here, because I don't have text. I've got the shape tool, so the spacebar does tend to work on the Mac side with text. Back to the, I'm sorry, with an object keyed out from the shape tool. Then I'm going to push the letter P. Nope, still not working. So I'll get over that or search and see if we can find that works some other way. Center of page. Now we're going to go up to text up in the menu, and we're going to go to change case, and we'll choose title case and say OK. So that works as expected. I'm going to double click to highlight, and I'm going to now go to, notice though that that does have that little glyph there. That was probably in Windows as well, but we click on that glyph and it shows the different ways that you can change or adjust the text accordingly. So with that highlighted, I'm going to say let's use a point of 36. Let's choose a different font. Also, since we're talking about differences, I do not see on the Mac side the font that we were used to using that was really special was the Gabriola OpenType font. So I do not see Gabriola there. So I'm going to maybe go back, see if the letter T works. T, so that does not take me to the beginning of my T's. So I'll scroll all the way down until I get tired of scrolling, or I'm looking for the letter T for Times New Roman. So by clicking that regular font there, now we can make it bold. We can make it larger, about 48 points. Also, small caps. This may work through the Windows text properties or the text properties Docker, but for now I'm going to try Control-Shift-K. In Windows, that would give me small caps, but I don't see that happening here, so that doesn't work. Alright, so back to our pick tool, shape tool, bring this up a little bit, and I can still select a certain group, and we can nudge that up or down individually by itself if we wanted to bring these two lines down, and then maybe bring this line up using the nudge. I'm holding down the up arrow key on my keyboard, or I can just click and drag these straight up here. Holding Control will well, nope. I'm holding Control on my Mac keyboard, and that's not constraining that. I'm going to guesstimate the Command key. So the Mac has the Command key, and it looks like that is keeping that more straight in line. Well, that didn't quite work. So let's Just nudge that up for now. I'm going to click off on the white space and change my nudge factor to say, how about 0.125, and go back to my shape tool, select my text and so that's moving a little faster. So a few little differences here as we work with text in the Mac side versus the Windows side. At this stage, I will go ahead and try and save this. So File and Save As. Fundamental difference here. So we're looking at Plaque CDR. And let's see. Right here, it gives us the ability to save that anywhere on our hard drive, of course. But the version, what can we save down to? Well, it looks like you can save all the way down to version 11. So it's giving us the name. So if this is confusing to you in all these different versions, here is a good reference. Version 2019, 2018, and 2017. All right, so I think I called that version 20 earlier, so this would be version 21 is 2019. All right, so we're going to choose Save Plaque CDR, and of course that changes up in our title bar on the Mac side. That's the way that looks. All right, so with that done, that kind of gives you a little bit of introduction to the Mac side of things. Let's maybe delete all of that. I'm pushing the delete key. See where our objects. Do those all act the same? If we draw a rectangle, there's a rectangle. It's defaulting to 0.5 points. I won't try and say preferences just yet. That'll probably come in another video, but it looks like we can scroll up to make that a hairline. And then apply that. If we right-click on the color red, most of us use the laser and we cut the polygons out with the color red, so we right-click on red. Notice the difference here on the Mac side. It gives us the ability to click a different palette. We can save that, close it. We can change the outline color or the fill by right-clicking on the color. I'm going to choose Set Outline Color, and now that has made that red. Or I can see if we can create a square with the Control key. Nope, Control doesn't work. How about the Command key on the Mac keyboard? Command is our Control key as in Windows. Then the space bar takes me back to the pick tool. Let's see if our old shape tool will let us create rounded corners. So like, for example, a name badge or something rounded like that. So that works as expected here too. So if we wanted a 1/4 inch across all of that, then there we go. So space bar back to the pick tool. So that works as expected. If we wanted to align these things together, we can push the letter C. Nope. That hotkey doesn't work. So we're going up to the button and choose align those centers horizontally. And so we'll have to figure out if we can use hotkeys later, but for now the buttons along the top are pretty easy to get to. Circles the same way, ellipses, control, not control, but our constraint key is our command key. So we're holding command and then releasing the mouse button. And then I'm going to space bar, select both of these, and we'll choose align center of the horizontal, the vertical, and the centers vertically. All right, so let's click on some, how about trying paragraph text? So by clicking and dragging, we can type out some text, and we can say, now this. Oh, you know, in Windows we had the ability to add placeholder text. I'm going to see if that has. So the ability in the Mac. I'm going to right click and see if I have the ability to insert placeholder text. You know, I don't see that here. So maybe that's somewhere else. So we'll have to dig into that. I don't see that here. So for now, we'd have to just type that stuff in, or we can change and highlight just like normal in paragraph text mode in Windows. So not much different there, but I don't see the placeholder text, which really comes in handy when you're making a test or template layout. All right, so what else? How about we try and fit text to a path? So we're going to click on some text and click off on the white space and say, this is CorelDRAW on a Mac. So back to our pick tool, and we're going to bring the font size down about 14 points. So just like in Windows, we'll expect to go to text and fit text to path. Nothing happens until we hover our cursor over a particular path, and we can see how CorelDRAW is responding as we move from path to path. So it looks like that is working as expected. I'll put that inside that, so that's working okay. How about we try putting maybe some text on the bottom, something like a year 2019. Say okay, let's make that bold, maybe a little larger. So let's go to text, fit text to path, and hover down to the bottom. The red line, of course, means it's centered. Then that may be a little too big. So let's bring the size back down to something like 18. So just like in the Windows side, we would have to use our mirror buttons here. So we'd have to flip the text left and right and flip the text up. And there we see, let's zoom up on that, how that text looks. So we're going to use the shape tool, and that's going to allow us to spread that text out a little bit, and then the space bar. So we're going to go back to zoom to the page, and then we can also go to our pick tool and maybe grab that and move that down a little closer to the outline. So that works as expected there. What if we were to try and import a piece of artwork? Let's do that. So we go to File, in the other Windows side of things, we would have an Import button, but I don't see that. So I'm going to go to File and Import, but I don't see Import, but I do see Export. Let's place. So I assume place would be the right replacement for import, and it looks like it is going to do that. So why they chose the word place, I don't know, but that's the way it goes. Let's go to Engraving Concepts here. Let's find maybe a logo to import so we can see how trace works and CC logos. Okay, let's go to this image here, and now let's make this much larger. So it brought in, so apparently import is called place in the Mac side of CorelDRAW. Let's delete that by just pushing delete. And I wish I had my hotkey for center, but I don't, so let's just make this larger. Shift key does work though, stretches in from the center. So here we have our logo, and I often will evaluate a logo and what it's made of by going to View and Wireframe. So I'm going to go to Page, and then I'm going to go to Enhanced, down to Wireframe. So we see indeed this is a pixel type image. So let's go back to Enhanced, and let's go with it selected. Just like on the Windows side, we would see Trace Bitmap. So we're going to choose Outline Trace of a clip art. So that's pretty standard from the Windows side of things, not much change there. And that was pretty fast. It's already got it traced. What if we do the before and after? How about large preview or wireframe overlay? So we see some different elements being traced. What if we reduce the detail a little bit and see if we don't try and capture as much? So by reducing the detail, we've got rid of some extra stuff there. I do see as I zoom up on this area, it's got some little bit of curves here, so we might have to reduce the smoothing on this to try and keep the straight lines straight. We can, just like in Windows, we can get rid of any color from the entire image, and zoom back out. Let's go to before and after. So we've got rid of all the color. Now let's say OK. So we'll put this image, undo, Control Z, or sorry, Command Z on a Mac. Let's move this one off to the side. So this one would be the bitmap, and this one would be the traced image. So under what used to be View, this is just our viewing preferences for wireframe. So there we see the trace versus the pixels. So that does work as normal. Alright, so now let's see if we were going to maybe print one of these to the laser. Let's go to align that to center. Now we can, the benefit of course of line art is you can make that any size without losing detail. View and Got to quit saying that view. It's just found here under wireframe. So that is made of lines. All right. Enhanced. So if I go up to File and I come down to Print, we're going to see the print engine, print dialog. So here, notice it's not in color for whatever reason. Not sure if that matters. Oh, that's probably because of the type of printer I have selected. So let's choose Epilogue. Now I'm going to go out on a little rabbit trail and just briefly say that Epilogue is one of the few, if not the only, manufacturers of lasers that has a direct Mac app. That means we have an app that you can download from the epiloglaser.com website, and on your Mac you can print out of now CorelDRAW, but also Illustrator to this Mac app. Now I haven't tried it yet because I'm not hooked up to a laser, but that's the idea. So if I select this represents my Fusion. And by the way, the Mac app was written only for the Fusion in mind, so that may need to go through some changes or updated, but we can talk about that in another video. But for now, this represents a 32 by 20 page area. So let's look at some similarities. On the Windows side, we've got color. Of course, we like to work in the RGB color palette, composite. Some of you will maybe remember those, but pretty much layout was what we used a lot of on to the laser side. So some of this is all of the same questions, just looks a little different. So we have our page. Notice we have this button down here called Imposition Tools. We'll cover that in a moment. Let's look at fitting to the page or as in document. We would always want this to say as in document for sending to the laser, and that's true also on the Windows side. So pre-press, postscript, no issues. Those pretty much answer all of the same questions. So now back to general. So my screen went a little black, not sure why that happened. So I'm going to say, how about apply? Any change there? Nope. I'm going to choose cancel. And let's come back. So I'm not sure why that screen went black, but let's go back to print. See if we have, there. Now we got our screen black. All right, page 1. So if I was hooked to the laser, I could say print. But like previous versions of CorelDRAW, Corel is made with auto margins printing or forcing that to the center of the page. We would like that to go to the upper left. So on many of your systems from Engraving Concepts, we have set or created a orientation or an imposition that said move that page to the upper left. Let's take a look at how that might work on the Mac side. So we'll go to Imposition Tools. All right, so we've got some of the same similar options here, position, or let's click on Imposition. So that's similar, shows us the boundary for the page. Notice here we've got pages across and pages down, that's similar. Don't have as many things in that property bar that we have, but it looks like it's close. Let's go to presets. Okay, so I have already created, last night I looked at that and created one by one. But how would that work on your system? Brand new, we would need to go to, let's see, general settings. There we are. General settings, page placement, or margins. And here is the margin. So in the Windows side, we have an auto margin button to click, but for now we're going to choose manual. So when we click manual, watch what happens. Right to the upper left. It's at this stage we would normally go back to our general settings, and then we would come in and save that setting, which I did, and I called it 1 by 1. So I would just overwrite mine to 1 by 1 in the upper left and say OK, and I'll overwrite it. We did recognize, Mr. Brewer found in 2018 that you could apply the InUp in the Corel presets, and it would allow you to save the page moving to the upper left by default, but we won't cover that in this video. So position, imposition. So how would you make multiple pages? Well, you would go, if I can remember myself, imposition, and then you would increase the number of pages across. So increasing that, and the number of pages down. And then how do we see those? Well, let's see. Let's take a look at on our settings there, the position there. So when we click the position button, it shows us our page. It's got one signature. Let's see, this button here would represent, that's not doing anything yet. So that's how you make multiple pages. And of course, with the imposition, you can come in and change or save these. Save the current preset as 8x6 plaque. So that's how we would normally work that. So if you don't have to go do that every time, you would say 8x6 plaque. Let's see, 4 across and 3 down. 4 across, 3 down. So that would represent a setting that you could choose from your list in the Imposition tab under the Presets Guide option. So more to come here. I'm sure we'll be learning a lot more of how Mac is handling this, but so far that looks like that will be very helpful and similar to the way we've worked in the Windows side of things. So if I say OK, there is our applied print preview screen, and then of course print would send that over to the laser. You could print it, looks like as a bitmap or to file. So if we wanted to print that out to PDF, so we won't get into that much for now. Trying to save as much time just hitting the hot topics, and so I will say apply or cancel. So that works as normal. A lot to learn and try, but so far for you Windows users that have heard everybody else talk about how great Mac is over the years, if you wanted to try it, this is how the entry level will work. How about we try an imposition? Let's see what that might work like. So let's make this smaller, and let's try and maybe insert some names and make multiple pages. Remember, multiple pages is simply the ability to come down here and duplicate a page, and we could even say copy the layers and their content so that it brings the layer or this logo into page 2. So now we have page 1 and page 2 saying the same thing. So we could do that manually, or let's try using imposition or with print merge. And so I'll say delete page, and that will let me now come up to our file and come down to print merge. Oh, by the way, scripts. This looks like that has taken over, or that's the name in the Mac side for macros. So in Windows, those of you that were really deep into macros and Visual Basic, I have zero experience using scripts. So there'll be more videos on that as we all learn more, or those that even want to move to the Mac side, how those work and if those can be translated easily onto the Mac side versus the Windows side. So let's now go back up to File and Print Merge. So with Print Merge, you'll notice it didn't open up a whole new dialog, but it did open up this Docker onto the side. So this is still real new to me, so I'm just going to fiddle my way through it. Create. So this is asking me to create these either from scratch. It's not that intuitive. It doesn't say that like the Windows side of things did. It wants me to import a file or add a column. I'm going to do this manually, so let's say just keep it basic with some, we'll call this EC names. So add. So there is our beginning field or record, and now we're going to add some data to that. So we want to add to this record some data. So notice it's not that intuitive. It's not asking us and pointing these things out, but this is the field and then the data underneath it. Let's see, let's add another column just for kicks here. Let's say the name is going to be, or let's try a number. That should be okay. 3 digits, starting value as 1, continual increment. Maybe uncheck that. Now let's see, let's continue. And so let's give that a name, call it ID number. So we add. So now we see we've got the record or the field names, and then now we've got the data to go ahead and key in. So I'm going to click on this plus sign, and that seems to be adding however number of records of data that I want. So I'm going to choose these. Let's see, 6. How will that get us some names? So I'm going to click once. This is also not very intuitive, but I'm going to click again, and that brings up the box to insert. So I feel like Windows handles this a little easier, but I'm going to type in the box, but I have to click Roy. And I'm not going to push enter. From experience, enter kicks me out of this window, and I don't want to start this over. So I'm going to just click off down in this open area, and that applied that. So not very intuitive in how this works yet, but just kind of fiddling my way through it. Click and click and click. So 3 clicks to get there, and typing these things in. And then click. So a lot of clicking. Click, click, and click, click, click. So Michael, click, click, Jimmy, and click. So we have the ability to also save this as a data source, so we'll see how that might look. And see, remember from imposition of Windows, we had to save it as a CSV for that to work. So I'm going to see if it'll let me save that as EC names, and I want the format to be a comma separated value file and save. So that's going to save that in my EC logos folder. Maybe I could just move that over to documents. That'd be easier to find. CSV and save. Let's replace it. Yep. All right, so let's see how this works. We're going to finish that. So over here we have our EC names and ID number. I am going to now see where it says here, insert the field. Now, Mr. Brewer made some really good recommendations early on in previous videos where we want you to get this set up exactly how you want it to appear, the right size, the right font, and what have you. So I'm going to type in here employee, and then I'd like that to be a little bit larger, and I want it to be a different font. So we want to get our placeholder set exactly the way we want it to be used. And then next, I'm going to highlight that, and then I'm going to, with EC names highlighted over here in the Docker, we will click Insert Selected Field. So there is our placeholder for the names. So go back to the pick tool. Let's add another field for the number. Well, actually, I didn't. So I did not add any ID numbers to that. Let's see if I go to edit that. Okay, so it went ahead and added those numbers numerically as I indicated in the previous setup. So 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's say cancel. Of course, you see that you can edit and go back into that as need to. But now we're going to select, or let's create maybe a number here, ID number. And let's make that a little bigger. Let's see if I have a stencil font. I'm going to push the letter S and type in stencil. I don't see that coming up. Sure wish it would have. So let's scroll or drag all the way down to the S's and see if I have a stencil font, which doesn't look like I do. So I'll choose square. All right. So now we have our two names. I'm going to go ahead and save this since I've gotten this far. Save, and it's overwritten plaque CDR. At this stage, we are ready to, what we always recommend selecting is merge to new document and not perform print merge. In other words, perform print merge would affect the template that I've created. I don't want to mess with it. I keep that intact. But when I click on merge to new document, you're going to see the number of pages down here increase. So let's see how that might work. Merge to a new document. This is something that people really, every time I show this in a demo, really opens users' eyes to the efficiency and ease of use of CorelDRAW over other graphic design software packages, and really allows for quick production, not only on laser, but maybe in a sublimation, printer, and so forth. All right, so we're going to say we'll have nothing selected. We're just going to say merge to a new document. So once that's clicked, it should be working, and boom. It works as expected, actually. Now you'll see here that I did not get these lined up. This is left justified where I'd inserted it, and that is left justified also. So this isn't really turning out the way I want it, so I'm going to close this down. This is the huge benefit to not clicking perform print merge, but merging that to a new document. So I can close that down and say delete, and it will take me back to my template. So I want, let's say we want these to be centered on each other. So they're both applied to center, but then we want to center align them together horizontally. All right, let's try that again. Merge to a new document. So now that they are centered and merged to a new document, something that we had in Windows called the envelope, I have not researched or even looked to see if we have envelope here, but I'm sure we do. So let's try that. Let's close out of this one another time, then delete. Let's say that we only wanted the names to be a certain size. So in the Windows side of things, we would go to find the word envelope and apply an envelope to that object so it limited the scope of the size of text in which it could be applied. And here is envelope, so let's see if this works the same way. I'm going to, with this object selected, so that's the key point here. This is selected, I'll choose add new, and that right there just applied the number, or applied an envelope to that placeholder. So that's working just as expected. And so the difference would be, if we are done with that, we can edit. And let's edit the ID numbers. And let's say for one of these, we can change this to a much larger number. So we want a really long number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so we'll say finish. And that applied that to that file, hopefully. And so now by with this having a larger number in the Randy record, then the envelope, if it works the same way as it should, it will keep that number, even as small or long as it is, fit within that parameter of the envelope. So let's give that a try. Merge to new document. Okay, so that did not work. I think my mistake was not having reapplied that data or that placeholder. So since I made changes to it, I'm going to delete that. This is why we don't want to merge to perform the merge to this template. We want to keep that intact. So I have the object selected. Let's highlight. Let's see, how would that work then? Insert. Oh, wrong one selected. So let's see, if we go back to our pick tool, select ID and insert. Okay, so let's get rid of this one because that one's not working with the applied envelope. This one is the one where we added the longer number to it, so that's probably why I didn't add that earlier. And we can go ahead and try and use the different font again. And let's go back and apply our envelope again. So effects, envelope, and add new to that object. Alright, so let's give this a try. So we'll close this, and now we're ready to merge to new document. Okay, so that worked. So we have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. And the reason this doesn't look centered is because I had a # in for the variable, so it is one character slid to the left. But All right, let's check to see if it kept. There you go. So one of the benefits of applying an envelope to a certain line of code is that it forces that data to stay within that parameter of the envelope. So that's all working as expected. Let's go back to my list. Didn't want to make too long of a video, but hopefully that will give us a brief introduction. We did the trace, we did an import, which is now called place. Not sure why. We created a new page, so all the fundamentals are there. Just a few differences, like no hotkeys. Macros is called scripts. So I hope this helps, gets everybody started. Those that are looking to go from Windows to a Mac, this is what that would look like. And for you Mac users that have been told all the great things about CorelDRAW, this might give you a good introduction, either to keep you working with Adobe or jump into the CorelDRAW pool as well. All right, so I hope this has been a help to you, but there it is, CorelDRAW Graphics Suite 2019 for the Mac, first time ever.